In episode 50, you met Elizabeth Powell and learned about shadow work. She's joining us again to enlighten us about the Akashic Records and the astral plane. Stay tuned for a fascinating conversation. Welcome to the Peep Podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Maroc, and I'm grateful you're here. The two big ideas behind the Peep Podcast are to show that the paranormal is more normal than most people think, and to connect the science to the psi, including ESP, psychokinesis, and intuition. In this episode, we're talking to Elizabeth Powell about two topics that cover a wide range of aspects of the paranormal. A quick update on my book, Daughter of the Mystic Moon. The Kickstarter will launch on Tuesday, July 8th. It will be live and available for backing for 15 days. If it is funded, everyone who pledges will receive their physical rewards, that means their books, by the end of August, and their digital rewards will come sooner. Special note, if you want a hardcover copy with a dust jacket, the Kickstarter is the only way to receive that version of the book. It will not be available through normal retail outlets. You can read the first chapter of Daughter of the Mystic Moon for free on my website and follow the Kickstarter page to be notified when it launches. Those links are in the show notes. Now back to this episode's interview. Elizabeth Powell first joined me on episode 50, Shadow Work with Elizabeth Powell, and since then she has added many more skills and experiences to her repertoire. She is an Akashic Records practitioner and Karuna Holy Fire Reiki Master. Through Be the Light Wellness, Elizabeth helps soul seekers step into personal empowerment, spiritual awakening, and deep self-connection through Reiki, Akashic readings, and holistic healing programs. Let's dive in with Elizabeth. Hi, Elizabeth. How are you doing tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I am so excited to talk to you again. I haven't I have spoken to you some since then, but we haven't had a podcast interview since episode 50. And I'm on episode 104, I think will be this
Yeah,
one. So
that's crazy.
it's been a minute.
Yes, yes. I'm
Last
happy to
time
be.
I'm happy you're here. Sorry. Last time we talked about shadow work and we talked about
Mhm.
Reiki.
Yes,
And since then, you have added some skills to your repertoire. And now you're doing work with the Akashic Records.
yes,
I would
yes.
I would love to find out how you got into that and what it is that you do.
Okay. Yeah. Just I guess for a little introduction, I guess. So my name's Elizabeth, and I'm an Akashic Records practitioner and channeler of Divine Feminine Reiki, which is a unique healing system that was gifted to me through the Akashic Records. And it's a new style of Reiki that actually helps people heal through past lives, doing soul retrievals, cord cuttings, and just really provides a beautiful life-changing transformations. And I work with empathic women who are ready to reclaim their power that they've handed over, either in relationships, family dynamics, or past traumas. So, in my private sessions, I like to mix my methodologies, divine feminine Reiki, Akashic readings, clearings, some past life regressions to really bring in like this soul level healing and clarity. So I also teach Reiki. So I teach all the Reiki levels all the way up to Karuna Holy Fire and Divine Feminine Reiki as well. So I'm super excited about all of that. But that's a little bit about who I am and what I do. As far as getting into the records, my first experience with the Akashic Records actually goes back way further than even Reiki. Because the first time that I personally ever heard about the Akashic Records was in church.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, so I would hear my grandfather preaching and talking about how when we die, God will read from the book of life and will go over with me every single experience and every thought and everything I did or didn't do that I was supposed to. Um, and while he didn't call it the Akashic Records, but whenever I finally did get into the Akashic Records, I realized that the records and the book of life in Christian terms is one and the same.
Okay.
But yeah.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I have not put those two things together, so you might have just blown my mind a little bit.
Yeah. There's a lot of crossover that people don't realize between Eastern and esoteric beliefs in Christianity. And it's really been interesting to see for me, you know, with the work that I do from just a personal belief standpoint. While yes, I am still Christian, but I bring in and really look at a lot of the esoteric teachings. And there is such an animal called esoteric Christians, where it is that Christianity belief where God and Jesus Christ is the center of your belief systems.
Hmm.
But, conversations of past lives and reincarnation is talked about and is accepted, as well as, what we're going to talk about with the astral realm and, entities there and ghosts and, things like this. So it's really interesting.
I love it. I guess I am an esoteric Christian too. So, um, and I just learned another new thing. You're on a roll with me tonight, and I love it. So, okay, so how did you actually get into the Akashic records? Like, what spurred your interest in that?
Right. So I at the time I was practicing Reiki and was taking on clients, and then I had one of my clients ask me, they were said, have you ever had an Akashic record reading? And I said, I have never heard of that, because at this time I still was thinking, book of life, wasn't putting two and two together. And I was like, I would love to do that. Let me just try this. And when you think of Akashic record readings, you kind of start to have this idea similar to like psychic readings. Okay. And while Akashic readings and psychic readings are similar in the fact that the reader is doing channeling, but in an Akashic record reading, the practitioner or the reader is channeling the Akashic records, not the person's individual energy.
Okay.
So the guides that are in your records are speaking through the channel, um, and offering guidance in that way. So I went in for my reading and it blew me away. It explained things about myself and things that I have seen around other people all my life and what my soul came here to do, even talking about my soul purpose and my soul blueprint. And I had been really confused and in the dark about a lot of this stuff most of my life, because I didn't grow up in that environment that explained those kinds of things. And that Akashic record reading gave me that clarity that I never thought that I would have. And on top of it, gave me a direction. So
Awesome.
I I got into it that way, and then I decided that I wanted to be a reader for myself. And of course, whenever you start reading for yourself and you are a healer, it naturally comes that you want to heal other people. So I just continued on with my training. So
So when you do Akashic record readings, like you mentioned the soul blueprint, what exactly does that entail?
Yeah. So whenever we sit down for a reading, like I said, the practitioner will sit down and we're going to channel and go into the person's Akashic records, and you or anybody can sit and ask your guides questions about anything. I mean, the records hold everything, every life, whether it's on this planet or on another planet. You can ask about starseed and galactic lives. You can ask about your relationships, your past lives. You can ask about your children and why they chose you as a parent. Any soul contracts, themes that are in your soul blueprint. The list goes on and on. I do provide a, a little PDF to send to people because people are like, I have no idea what to ask my records. And it's overwhelming. So I always send a little PDF to help people know how to structure their questions. So that's what we do in a reading is we sit down and we talk to your guides, your ascended masters, teachers, and loved ones who sit in your records. And we talk about different things.
So are these guides different from the guide, I can't think of the right word for it, like the day-to-day guides that you always have around you? Day-to-day is
Yeah.
not the word I'm looking for, but you know what I mean?
Yes. Yes. So you always have a guide. You have one guide that goes with you into every life. Okay. And that is considered a teacher for you. That guide is just a little bit further on their spiritual journey than you are. And so that particular guide that's with you all the time, those are more along the lines of an they're found in the astral plane. They're found in the fourth dimension. They can be in higher dimensions. It just depends on the teacher. It depends on where you are at the time of consciousness. And so there are different guides in the Akashic records, and they're broken down into three different categories.
Okay.
Okay. So you have the ascended masters. And these are ones that people recognize the most. Like this is Jesus Christ, this is Buddha, Mary Magdalene, Kuan Yin, Jual Kul, like people that we know may have had an earthly incarnation, but they've transcended past the need of having earthly incarnations.
Mm.
But they really help support humanity from these higher realms. And they hold a lot of wisdom from many different traditions. So the ascended masters are the ones that you sit down with before you incarnate, and they help you map out your life.
Okay.
And so they're really wonderful to talk to, and they're really wonderful to ask about guidance and stuff with your soul purpose. The second type is teachers. So this is a little bit more of a mysterious group. It's usually the most misunderstood. But the teachers are non-physical beings of light who may or may not have incarnated on Earth, but they exist to help you understand your soul lessons and your patterns and your contracts. So they're not really emotionally attached to your choices, but they do guide you along the way. So they don't usually give names, but they might present themselves in forms that may feel familiar to you, like they could be angelic beings or they could be spirit animals. Those are good examples that
Okay.
people might recognize as the teachers. And the last ones are going to be your loved ones. And these are souls who you've had a relationship with in your life or in another life. And whenever they passed, they were given a choice to be in your Akashic records. And they chose to do that. And they're not ghosts that are like stuck or anything like that. But that fragment that you know from your incarnation with them is there and is helping you. And it's not just your family. This could be a friend who's passed, or your third grade teacher that you really resonated with, and they passed and they were like, "Hey, I'd like to be in your Akashic Records." So,
And every person who comes to you has a different set of guides. Is that right?
they can. So, I mean, some
Okay.
can overlap, especially the ascended masters and teachers. But yeah, everybody has their own individual little group of support.
That is so cool.
And they have really wonderful senses of humor. They do crack jokes, which I was not expecting. But as whenever I was learning to do this and was talking to my guides, they were like, if you have a sense of humor, then your higher self does too. And that means that we all do. It's like, okay, I love it. I love it.
That's good because it would be awkward if you have a sense of humor and your guys don't. That's the type of thing that movies are made of
Right.
or memes. Um, awesome. Okay, so when people come to you for an Akashic record reading, I would guess that they are looking for some sort of answers, like they're kind of lost and confused, or do you have people who come who just like they got it down, they just need one little tip as to which direction to go at this moment, or is it a little bit of everything?
It's a little bit of everything. The Akashic record readings is really good to help you get that bigger picture perspective of your journey through life. And like I said, it's not about fortune telling and trying to predict the future. So if you come to a reading and you're like, when am I going to get married? The guides are going to pop back sometimes with answers like, well, when are you going to get serious about your dating prospects? Like they're going to put it back on because they want you to take just this beautiful radical responsibility for your life. So I tell people the Akashic Records is in the fifth dimension and above. So it's
Okay.
in those places of unconditional love. So if you're wanting to come to an Akashic record reading, then you probably are going to be asking for some clarity, or you may be on a spiritual journey and doing the inner work. And it's like you've done the work on this one thing over and over again, and it keeps coming up, and you don't know what to do, to break this pattern. That's usually keywords for me as a practitioner. That's like, okay, this is a great time for us to do a healing.
Hmm.
Is there any soul contracts with you and another person that can be cleared at this time, or any cord cuttings that we can do, just to name a few things. So there's different things that you can do. You can even do soul retrievals, if you have soul
Hmm.
fragmentations. But yeah, it's a little bit of everything. Yeah,
Soul retrievals are a really interesting
they
idea
are.
to me. Like that's so actually rather than me say, I think it's this, can you please explain what a soul retrieval is? Because I'm probably not quite there.
So a soul retrieval, how can I best explain this? First off, you think of your higher self, like you have a higher self, and then you come to this earth to incarnate. You yourself are just a fractal of your higher self. Okay. This is where we get into the concept of twin flames. I won't talk about that, but um, that's where you get this concept. And so whenever you have a traumatic moment in this life, and whenever I say traumatic moment, it's a trauma to you. It does not have to be like something abuse or anything like that. It's trauma to you. Sometimes our spirit will exit out of the body because it doesn't feel safe in the moment. And during that exit time, a piece may break off. Okay. And then it's safe to come back in the body. that part of you comes back in, but the soul fragment's left in that moment. And then what happens is that that soul fragment stays in this loop of what has happened in the past. So we do soul retrievals to go back to reclaim that fractal and bring it back into our light grid or our energy field. Okay.
Okay.
I hope that answered your question.
That did.
Great.
That did. Actually, that answered it, and I would have been not quite right. So I'm glad I didn't take a wild guess on what that was. And I'm sure that you actually answered the same question for some of the listeners out there too.
Okay. Good.
Okay, so another thing that you had mentioned we could talk about is the three levels of the astral plane.
Yes. Yes. The astral plane. This is a really big topic. I thought that this would be great whenever we're going to do this interview because your podcast is about the everyday paranormal.
Mhm.
And the paranormal is that astral realm. It's that fourth dimension. Okay. And whenever I say the astral realm, for those that may not know exactly what that is, it's the fourth dimension. And it's often described as that space that we enter into during dreams or deep meditation, sometimes near death experiences, if you're an astral projector. But it exists between our physical world and the fifth dimension and above, those higher spiritual planes. Okay.
Okay.
And it is huge. It's vast. Like there's dimensions within dimensions within dimensions. And our brains do not like this. Brains like linear, but time and the concept of space does not work the same. Okay. So for those of you that might be listening, you might be an astral worker. And you may either do this through lucid dreaming or shamanic journeys, meditations, astral projections, but that's the realm that you're going into. This is the realm that shamans work in a lot because they do the journeys. And the concept and the whole lesson of this realm is about discernment. Okay, this is where you go into this realm and you can discern between spirits of the light and those that are not. But there are three different levels of the astral plane. Okay, so you have the higher astral world, and the higher astral world is the place that most people are trying to go to because it does mimic a lot of like this angelic feeling to it. It's very light filled. You will meet some angels here, your astral guides are here, and you can access some soul level wisdom there. But it's still the fourth dimension, and it's so you still have to use common sense and discernment in these realms. Okay.
Okay.
And then you have the middle world. This is the one that people go to the most, especially in dreams, because this is also referred to as the mirror world. So it is a complete reflection of Earth. Every rock, every blade of grass, me, you, everything has an astral counterpart in it. Okay. So this is where you go in your dream world to kind of play out any unresolved issues either within yourself or you can do this with another person. Okay, so I always tell people whenever we do dream work during Akashic readings, it's like, all right, we have to really look at your dream characters. Okay, we have to figure out like who's what, and then we have to discern if that's really them or if this is a fake version or an entity that is pretending to be somebody else. So you will find trickster energies within the astral realm. That's why we have to discern and kind of test the spirits as Jesus pointed out in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And I love it because a lot of Christians don't realize that Jesus talks about the astral realm all the time and talks about these trickster energies and how testing the spirits is really important
Hmm.
because we do this work. You know, we ourselves have an astral body. Okay. So we have that connection there. But the last plane within the astral realm is called the lower astral world, or it's also known as the eighth sphere. So this is, I call it the nightmare world. So whenever you have a nightmare, and or like I have people who say, I think my parents' house is haunted. And I'm like, okay, how do you know this? And they're like, well, I had a dream and I keep having a dream that I go and I am in my parents' home and there's all these scary things in their home and I think it's haunted. And I'm like, I hate to break this to you, but there's fake versions of everything also in the astral plane. There's fake Jesus, okay, in the astral plane. So it does not necessarily mean that your parents' house, for the sake of example, is haunted. It means that whenever you went into the astral plane, you probably were in between the lower and the middle worlds, and you were trying to work through some things, or
Hmm.
trying to, you know, maybe even spiritually clear out some stuff that is around you, you know. So just so people know if you're experiencing that. But
Yeah.
the lower world really does have a lot of shadows, a lot of earthbound spirits, parasitic energies. Um, and if you're an astral worker, this is where you can do a lot of shadow work. You can combine the two, but you have to really know what you're doing, and you really have to know how to discern the spirits because you'll have spirits that'll come in and act like they're, like I said, like they're Jesus, and they want you to worship them, you know, by doing certain things. Like they reveal themselves to you by speaking certain things and asking you to do certain things. But those are the three planes. And then you have what's known as the transition zone. Okay.
Okay.
Or in esoteric terms, it's called Kamaloka, and that's Kamaloka.
Okay.
And this is the region of the astral realm that we know in the Western tradition as purgatory. Okay. So this is the realm of desires and attachments. A lot of emotional residues here for people. Um, but it's part of the human experience after we die. Okay. So this transition zone is located, you know, lower to middle astral plane. And like I said, it's a transitory zone that souls will pass through after death, especially those that still are heavily attached to the material world and they haven't fully released emotional wounds or addictions or their identity. Okay. So technically, this would be the space where there's earthbound spirits or ghosts that could linger if they have some unresolved traumas, guilt, or they're maybe unaware that they've died.
Mm.
Okay. So it really depends on the person's incarnation and what kind of work that they've done on themselves and spiritually, or just kind of how they are, their tendencies of how attached they can be to determine what kind of work they do here and how long they stay here before they go into their next journey.
Okay. So, using a personal example that I've put out to everybody who listens on the podcast. So, if
Uh-huh.
you if you haven't heard this, and Elizabeth, I don't expect you to have heard this because you're busy. But people who listen regularly have probably heard about my experience when I moved into this new house last year. There was something, and I'm not even sure it was a human spirit, that was very angry. This is a new build construction neighborhood, and I was
Mhm.
like the eighth person to move in out here, and there's only like I think 25 houses. So, um, brand new neighborhood. And I'm the sensitive one. So, as has been the case my entire life, I get to be the target when somebody or something somewhere on the other side of the veil decides, oh, I need attention. So,
Right.
I was being attacked. Um, I had stuff happen while I was awake, but I was attacked in my sleep twice.
Okay.
And the first one, I woke up and I thought I had had a stroke, because it was a very physical situation. The second one, I was dreaming, and I I was at the Lincoln Theater, which is a bar that I work at regularly doing lights, and in this dream. And I was like, why isn't anybody here? This is going to be a great show. The place was just like empty and dark and creepy. And those kind of venues can be empty and dark and creepy, but this was like to a whole nother level. And then I could
Right.
see myself from behind me, and a hand was reaching toward my shoulder. And I got creeped out. And as I was waking up, I said, I like whispered, go away. And I
Mm-hmm.
felt the the sheets in my pajama top and the sheet move as I was waking up, like something had gone through me and out from my chest.
Uh-huh.
And that happened to be the morning that I had an appointment with a shaman to figure out if I had picked up a spirit attachment or if it was something attached to the house. So like I was already planning to take care of this thing. I just needed somebody with an outside sensibility, like a third party to tell me what was going on because I was a little too close to it. Like when I'm helping other people, I can usually figure it out, but when it's me. Anyway, so having gone through that story briefly, is that an example of dealing with that transition zone? Or like, what do you think that was?
From what it sounds like, like I said, there are trickster energies in the astral plane. And then there can be, it's very interesting. There's a mixture. To me, what that sounds like is an entity that, from the Akashic Record perspective, is called the Shade. Okay. This is known as, or described as, the shell of a person's shadow self that is left after their period in the transition zone. And so the souls went off to reincarnate, but this shell is left.
Hmm.
Okay. And it can look like a person. It can look like that very same person. Um, but these parts can sometimes be used by entities that are not of the light. And they can really attack you in your dreams and in the astral plane. And everything that happens in the astral plane affects our 3D world
Mhm.
because they're just so connected. Um, so that's what it sounds like to me. And so it could be a mixture of, like I said, somebody's shadow self that was left over, and an entity was using it to just, you know, aggravate you and try to come towards you and try to gain access in some way to you. Because those things, that the shade, and then there's the vitalized shell of this, where our own thoughts can create these entities.
Hmm.
if it's powerful enough. So this is where you get these ideas now in the spiritual world where people are talking about like self-development, watch your thoughts. And it's true because these thought forms, your fear, your worries, your insecurities can feed these things and will manifest in the astral realm. And then they can take a mind of their own and actually come towards you and use your very fear against you. So it could be a mixture of some things going on. I would have to probably look in your Akashic records to know what was going on for sure,
Yeah.
or even could look into the Akashic records of the home that you've purchased.
Interesting.
Because yeah, your house, your business, even your pets have Akashic records. But that's what it sounds like to me
Yeah.
from my perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. And um I smudged and used holy water and I haven't had an issue since. So it was over that day after I talked to my shaman friend.
Yeah,
Um
good.
but yeah, it that was the first time I had been that creeped out and scared since I was a teenager
Really?
living in a haunted house. Like I do paranormal investigation and I do energy work, and it takes a lot to really freak me out. And that thing got to me.
Yeah,
But then I took care of it.
good.
So,
Yeah, they like I said, they have the ability to really know what you fear, like I said, and use it against you. And so this is probably a good time to talk about how those kind of entities do this,
mhm.
especially in dreams, because like the dream that you were experiencing, where you were in that place that looked like your work, okay, that lets me know that you were in the mirror world, okay,
Yeah.
and it was creating this illusion of what was happening to set you up to feed off of your fear. Okay. And so that illusion is called glamour. Okay.
Okay.
And every astral being can do it, whether it's of the light or not. Okay. Most of the time, if they're of the light, they have no reason to do this
Right.
because trying to deceive you, but they can if they have an astral form. So a good example of glamour that people probably would recognize is maybe you've seen movies where there's a witch in the forest, okay? And these hunters are walking through the woods and they come upon a very beautiful maiden, and all of a sudden there's like this table of amazing food, and they sit down and they're flirting with the woman and they're eating this beautiful food, and then all of a sudden the food turns rotten
Yeah.
and the beautiful woman turns into the witch and she has the element of surprise and kills them.
Yeah.
Okay. That illusion is called glamour. Okay. And so astral beings can do that, even in your dreams, to create that.
Well, I don't like that.
Yeah.
But, um, yeah, and I've heard of glamour in similar ways. Just because I read a lot of fantasy, so that's an idea that comes up a lot in fantasy. Um, but yeah, that's really interesting. Like I go to a lot of places in my dreams that have had importance to me, like that particular venue or my childhood home. And so the house that I lived in from third through 10th grade in Mississippi ended up being haunted before we moved because somebody played with the Ouija board. It was not me. I knew better. Um,
Yeah.
and invited something in, and that it
Yeah.
didn't leave. And then while we were living there, I started having nightmares and things started moving literally in the house. But then we moved. So, but I still have times, not all the time, but usually more stressful periods of my life. I go
Yeah.
back to that house and it's the creepiest place ever, like way creepier than it was in life. So to think about that's like the mirror version of the house, and it still gives me the creeps. It's kind of
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, so it sounds to me like your soul is still desiring to do some work. So you may have even had a soul contract with the house, that home. You planned to live in that kind of home and to, you know, resolve any issues from that house. So
That's a really interesting thought. Okay. I might have to come to you for an Akashic Records reading. And I only laugh because it's true. Um, okay, so when somebody passes, um, does everybody go to that transition zone? Like,
yes.
okay,
Yeah. Everybody goes to the transition zone. And I say that because everybody has a life review with their guides, and they go over like, what was this life supposed to be about? What karma was you able to neutralize or correct? And what were you not? Things like that.
okay. And I would guess, since it's kind of like purgatory, that your time in that zone probably depends on how much you still need to work through, or just your ability to let go, or something along those
Yeah.
lines.
Yeah. I mean, so think a little bit about the how we pass before we even have our exit point and go into the transition zone. Our body has to prepare, our mind has to prepare. And that usually takes, what, 10, 20 years, you know? And then you finally get to that point where you are passing, and you've come to terms with not being here, and you've ticked all your boxes of what you want to take care of before you leave, and say the things that you want to say to your family. So whenever you go, and if you die that way, and you go into the transition zone, you may spend a little less time there. It depends on, again, like your incarnation and what you were able to do or not do whenever you were alive. That will depend on how long you stay there. But you have free, I want people to know that you have free will to stay there. Okay.
Okay.
This is not like a punishment zone. Okay. So, because I know people ask me a lot, like if people have committed suicide, or they've had like sudden death
Hmm.
kind of stuff, and you don't have that preparatory time beforehand. And there's the concepts like, okay, like if you do this or you experience this, that you're going to go to purgatory or this transition zone because God's punishing you. Okay.
Right.
That is not so. Okay. That transition zone is to help those spirits realize that they are past, and to do the necessary prep work that they needed to do that they didn't have a chance to do. Okay. And they have their own guides there that are helping them with this process
That's good.
before before they journey on. So if anybody has lost a loved one to that, I don't want them to worry. I don't want them to think that their loved one is being punished or that they're trapped somewhere. Their souls have free will always to stay where they need to be for their process.
Okay. This is going to be a random question, but I just read it like a few months ago. Well, at this point, 6 months ago. Have you ever read The Afterlife of Billy Fingers?
I have not, no.
Okay, write that down.
Okay.
It actually it very much matches what you're saying. And the
Okay.
lady who wrote it, Billy Fingers was her brother. It was a brother's nickname. And she wrote it because he died suddenly. He'd had a really rough time with his life. And she went into a deep depression, and he started visiting her from the transition zone. And it didn't call it that, but what you're describing is very
Mhm.
much what he described where he was. And so
Right.
it's a really interesting book. And whether it's totally true or she was just a novelist who got creative, it's totally worth the read.
Nice. Yeah, I definitely will read that.
Yeah.
I love stuff like that.
Yeah. It was really good. Um, okay. Have we covered everything we said we were going to cover?
Um, I mean, I haven't gone over. I've talked about a few entities that you would meet in the astral plane, and I don't think that I've gone over like how the concept of ghosts
Yes,
and what
please.
happens on. Um, so I'm glad that we touched on soul fragmentation because ghosts and apparitions are similar to this. Okay. So yeah. So the concept of ghosts and apparitions. So let's say that you are investigating a haunted place and you go and you happen to see the the ghost or the apparition. Like you see the guy walking down the corridor every night at 8 p.m., right?
Mhm.
Or whatever the situation is. What you're seeing is actually not a stuck soul. Okay. Like the soul has already transitioned on. Like there's nothing that can happen that will stunt a soul's journey. Okay. So what you're seeing and what you're experiencing in that way is you are seeing the fragment that has broke off,
Okay.
that's stuck in that loop. Okay. And you just happen to be sensitive enough to see it, or there's enough energetic energy behind this this moment for this person that is allowing it to be seen even with the human eye or within the third dimension, our physical world.
Okay.
Okay. Same thing with intuitives. Like whenever you go to a haunted house and maybe you don't see, the ghost, but they go to a corner in the room and they're like, okay, something happened here, right here.
Hmm.
So what they're picking up on is actually the energetic impression of the house or the place that's haunted because again that has a consciousness too and holds on to memories, so they're actually reading like some of the energy of the home and that's one of the energetic imprints of the place that you're investigating. Does that make sense?
It does. With like the repeated action at the same time, paranormal investigators tend to call that residual haunting, which is it's
Yeah.
basically the same idea. It's just something. Some people call it the stone tape theory, and for whatever reason, that phrase drives me nuts. But it's the idea that there was so much energy in that action that it got impressed into the energy of the building, and those who are sensitive might be able to see it or hear it or somehow pick up on it.
Right.
And then the other, just trying to like make these connections. The
Yeah.
the other is, yeah, it's similar. I don't think we have like, well, everybody's got a word for something, but I don't think there's like a good agreed upon word for that. So, but it
Right.
makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, it's just like I said, it's just you're witnessing that soul fragment stuck in that loop.
So when
Yeah.
you work with somebody to retrieve a soul fragment, you you can take them back to that moment and have them release that. Is
You
that
can
the right word?
you can. So so it depends on so whenever we do healings in the Akashic records, we always have to ask the person's higher self if this is ready to be released.
Okay.
Okay. Because like your guides are never going to heal something just for the sake of you bypassing. Like they want you to do the work. So, but if like let's say that a higher self says yes, we can do this work, and there's a soul fragment back in a past life for somebody, and it's actually haunting or a ghost in a haunted place. We could go back. We could go back through into the past life or travel back to that place for that person. And there's two ways we can do this because again, the soul fragment that has broke off has free will also. So it may choose to return or not. Okay. So we can either go back and let's say that the soul fragment does not want to return. We can still work in the energy of what happened in that moment to clear or release or accept or integrate whatever needs to be done to where now that soul fragment is getting what it needed that it didn't get in the past. Okay.
Okay.
If it does want to return, then we can actually retrieve the fragment itself and bring it back into the light grid of the person.
Okay.
Okay.
So when you
Or the
say,
energy.
I was going to say, so when you say light grid, do you mean energy field? So yeah. Okay. All right. That makes sense. I'm processing as we're talking because
Yeah. It's a lot.
this is a lot of a lot of new stuff for me. And like I said, making those connections.
Yeah.
So are there
Yeah.
other types of entities you might meet there? I mean, we've talked about the ascended masters, like
Yeah. Well, the ascended masters are going to be, remember, fifth dimension and above.
right. Oh,
Okay.
okay, right.
But there are, I probably don't have time to go over every single one.
Yeah, no, I do want to be respectful of your evening.
No, like I said, I don't know how long your episodes tend to be.
There's
But there are some I do want to cover that I think might be important if people are
okay.
doing astral work and they encounter these. So we talked a little bit about the shade,
Hmm.
okay, where that is uh, the shell of a lower or shadow self of a person that's left after their period in the transition zone. And it's kind of wandering around out there. Sometimes you see this, like if you dream and you see shadowy figures, maybe they don't really do anything, but they just happen to be kind of lurking around or walking around.
Hmm.
That could, that's what could be shade, okay, in the astral world. But they can be used by other entities to do work or to
Okay.
cast glamour or whatever. Um, then you have the vitalized shell within that, where your thought forms are creating shadows and they're creating these entities in the astral realm that can, again, take a mind of their own, kind of escape their creator and can come back on you. But the good thing about this is that if you create it, then you can destroy it. Okay.
Good.
Um, so those are the two that we've kind of touched on already. Let's see. Let's go ahead and get this out of the way. Angels. Okay.
Cool.
um, yep. So you can see there's and angels, think of angels, there's hierarchies.
Hmm.
There's hierarchies within angels.
Yep.
And humans are actually within that hierarchy. Okay. So a lot of people that are incarnated right now, not everybody, but a lot of people are trying to ascend into being that angelic being. And that's what their journey is about. So you can see angels in the astral plane. Um, and they are usually trying to, they usually are trying to raise the vibration of the person that's doing the astral work into those angelic frequencies. Okay.
Okay.
So sometimes that work can happen even in dream world or in meditations. Okay. And sometimes they can take human form, just like you read. They can take
Yeah.
human form and do the same as well. Um, and they can even be from different star systems.
Wow.
So that was really interesting to me because we think about star systems and we automatically think star seeds or aliens, but
Yeah.
angels can be in different star systems as well, depending on what their functions are and what they're doing at the time.
Okay. I don't know why we would limit it. We just are humans and like to put boxes around things. But yeah, I
Yes.
never thought about it.
Yeah. Then there's nature spirits like your elves, your gnomes, your, you know, things like that. And they're pretty neutral. Like they don't really hate humans. They're just kind of indifferent, but they are mischievous. Okay. Which is why we have fairy tales. Okay.
Hmm.
So often people are like, oh, this is like fairy tale stuff and all this and all that. Human awareness and consciousness was so different back then. Okay. To where, they didn't have televisions. There was a lot more neutral time. There was a lot more
Hmm.
time for people to explore themselves or to be connected in that way to where they could see these things. And so that's where you get it. That's where the stories come from, is people actually experiencing, seeing these nature astral beings.
Yeah.
So you can see those. Just remember that they can cast glamour. Okay.
Yes.
Just remember that. um, let's talk about some other ones here. The other two that I really would like to talk about is what's called the adept, and it's ADEPT, the adept. So this is someone who was living, who was also working with a master or a teacher, and they've transitioned over and they're awaiting a reincarnation. But essentially they're kind of hanging out in the astral plane, and they are a teacher and an astral guide for another person,
Okay.
if that makes sense. um so once their lessons with you are complete, they move on and they go into their reincarnation. Okay.
All right. So would an adept be part of the team you contact when you work with the records, or is this just something completely different?
That one is more, since it's that one's in the transition zone still,
Okay.
on and
So
I'm
not
kind of
so not up to
Mhm.
the fifth dimension and beyond. Okay. I'm getting it.
Yeah, you're good. The adept is actually trying to work their way ascendedly to that, to where they could be just a
Okay.
teacher, you know, because teachers have, remember, they have or maybe have not incarnated, but they've kind of leveled up into those things. So the adept is sort of like the in between
Okay.
school.
That's my goal for my next in between episode. Yeah.
But this is a good example. Sometimes sometimes in the astral plane, if you meet an adept, it could be a past life you. Okay.
Interesting.
That's doing this. And sometimes, like, I'll see that in the teacher section of the Akashic Records, depending on what dimension that the soul's been able to ascend to. You can have a past life version of you or a future version of you trying to help you on your journey. So that's really cool. I've
That
seen that happen.
is.
That's really cool. Um, and then there's just ordinary people after death. Okay. So, like, they really weren't doing any kind of spiritual development, and that's okay. Not every life is about that, but they've died of old age. You might see them sometimes in the astral plane. Again, that's part of that. What work are they needing to do
Hmm.
after their after death process? Okay. So you might see them. Okay. Some people know how to journey to this transition zone. Sometimes you can do that in your dreams. You
Okay.
kind of look around, you know. Um,
So if I have spontaneous mediumship in my dreams, which I do sometimes, like
yeah,
a deceased loved one comes and talks to me. Sometimes it's to give me a message. Sometimes it's just to kind of hold my hand for a minute.
yeah,
But is that basically where I am while I'm dreaming?
you could be. It depends on where they are.
Okay.
Um, I would Off the cuff, I would say yes, more than likely. Or you might be in a one in the higher world, and maybe they've come to meet you there. Okay,
Okay.
because they can still kind of go in between. Again, it depends on their work that they're doing. But you can go into the transition zone yourself and then have those spontaneous mediumships. You know, it depends on where your soul's traveled.
Yeah.
Souls like to play.
Mine definitely seems to.
I know I've had dreams where I've gone to the transition zone before too. And to me, every time I go, it's really interesting. It feels like I'm in a huge train station, and there's all these different tunnels. There's all these different people, and some are shadowy and some are not, and some, you know, and so it's really interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool. I probably have a million questions, but I don't want to keep you.
Oh, you're
And we are,
I think
it's
I think
typically
that's probably a lot
okay.
for
Yeah, I
your
think I I
there's
I
more
think my
but
listeners are probably as mind blown as I am right now. Um, and I hope they are, because that's what this is all about.
yeah,
So just to
yeah.
introduce new ideas and to yeah, when you said that you had some things connected to the paranormal, I was trying to figure out like what it could be. And there are so many different connections, like we were saying, like residual energy is a fractal and just yeah. So I'm probably gonna dream about all of this tonight, speaking of dreams, because that's how my brain works out things that I'm
Yeah.
learning. Um, but that is so cool. So okay.
Uh, you know what I could, whenever we talk about discerning spirits,
Oh yeah, let's get back to that.
yeah. So if anybody's listening and does that work of astral projection or in your dreams, and you're seeing entities, you have to really listen to what they're saying. Discernment is about bringing in the information, let it marinate for a second, and asking yourself, does this feel right? Okay.
Mhm.
So the one thing that I do the most, whether I see Jesus or whatever, if I know I'm in the astral plane, even if I see my own mama, like, you know what I'm saying? Like it,
Yeah.
because they pretend to be anything. The one thing I say to it is, show me your true self.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And by saying that, first off, you're letting it know that you are lucidly participating in where you are.
Hmm.
Okay. And that you are not and that you're not afraid, that you're not here feeding any of your own negative thought forms. Okay.
Okay.
So it can't take that energy from you. Okay. There's nothing to be afraid of in this astral plane. Even if you see like the scariest things could ever imagine, you have free will.
Hmm.
Okay. So this is not something where, like in the movies, like, oh, a demon can just shanghai your soul because you're in the astral plane. Like there's a process to possession. So you again, because there's the concept of free will,
Yeah.
right? So for example, I'll give examples to help people understand how you can discern. So even during Reiki sessions, like I had a person who was trying to connect to their higher self and was doing some work outside of the sessions. And so she came and she's laying on the table, and we're not really talking or anything. She's relaxing, and I can see an astral being walk up, and it looked like her higher self, like it looked like her.
Yeah.
But here's what it said to me. It said, I'm her higher self, and she's doing some things wrong, and I can't gain access to her so that she can fully embody me on this earth. Okay, which is the ascension process. You want to embody as much of your higher self as you can, right? But a higher self doesn't need access to you. It is you. Like that
Right.
connect in. So I immediately was like, that's not right. So, and I said to it, show me your true self. And it ended up being what we like we talk about. It was a shade. It was a shadow entity that looked very demonic. And sometimes whenever you see those, sometimes it could be again like the person's shadow self trying to do things, right?
Yeah.
Or it could be another person's shadow self trying to do like all this different things can happen like this. And so I did, since I was doing work with her, I said, who do you belong to? And they speak in riddles sometimes. And it said, somebody that she's close to. And I said, well, you don't belong here. You need to leave. And it left.
Good.
So those are some things that you can say to discern. But again, like you have to really listen
Mm-hmm.
to what it's saying. So anything that wants access to you or is requiring you to perform some kind of ritual for it. Okay. Like another one. This one in another Reiki session, I didn't see it, but I could hear it. And the client's laying there and she's like, I'm dealing with this and this and this. And I was like, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, like, I don't know how to help you with this. I'll do Reiki, but I don't know how to help you journey somewhere or what we need to do or what we need to release. It kind of sounded like she needed to do her own work,
Mm-hmm.
right? But lo and behold, I could hear an entity come into the room and say to me, if you give me access to her, I can help her with this. And then she can give you these wonderful reviews and everything will just really work out. Uh, no. I would much rather my client leave with nothing than
Right.
to have this situation happen. And so if you're an energy healer and that comes up sometimes, if you're intuitive, just know that it's not that something that you're doing wrong or that you're accessing something that you shouldn't be. It's part of the journey. And sometimes, like I knew for me, looking back on those instances, that was a test for me in discernment,
Yeah.
doing intuitive work and working in the astral realm. Because as an energy healer, I don't have the authority to override my client's free will to
Right.
give the access to it. Um, but it will use those kinds of, it will feed off of your insecurities and your desires to help something or even help another person to gain access. And you have to really listen,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And yeah, so those are examples that I share with people
Yeah.
to to really discern and
Those are good
test.
examples. And I like that. Show me your true self and who do you belong to?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Two very important questions. And
Yeah,
just from my own personal life experience, they're good things to ask of humans too, like living humans sometimes. Yeah,
absolutely.
especially as an empath, you don't really have to say it out loud. You're like, "Oh, you are showing me your true self." Um,
Yes. That's a good one too. Like if I'm sitting down and maybe I'm talking to somebody and they're new to me and I'm trying to network and possible collaboration, of course I'm
mhm.
listening to what they are saying, but I'll ask like, God, show me what I need to know about this person.
Yep.
And usually to me, I'm wanting to see their shadow self because for my work, in doing shadow work, if I can see your shadow self, then I know what issues you're dealing with. So I can tell if somebody's coming to manipulate me or if they're dealing with envy or greed. Okay.
Hmm.
Because I can see that shadow and the shape of that shadow gives you a clue. Okay.
Interesting.
And some of that's demonology work. So if you can, because they do look like demons.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's how you can kind of tell like, oh, this giant fly standing behind you, well, that's a particular demon of envy. Great, well, I know that that's what you're dealing with and why you're coming to me for something, you know. So it, that's kind of like
Yeah.
what I do. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that could lead us down a whole other rabbit hole.
Yes.
Um, And for
Yes.
somebody like me, I'm not as visual because I basically made a deal that I didn't want to see things anymore when I was younger.
Yes.
But I
Great.
very much trust my gut feelings and my instincts about people. So if what I'm feeling from them is not lining up with what they're saying and how they're saying it, I know not to trust them. And
Absolutely.
that's a much simpler version. So maybe I don't know right away like what they're dealing with, but I know there is one there that I don't want to mess with.
That's right. Yes. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. We all have our different gifts. Yours are pretty incredible.
Thanks.
Yeah. And I'm so excited for all the work you're doing. So, tell the
Huge.
listeners how to get in touch with you and where they can find you.
So my website is Be the Light Wellness, and it's BEE, like Bumblebee. So Be the Light Wellness. You can also email me at bethelightwellness@gmail.com. And I periodically will do workshops and dive into these subjects, and for those who are spiritually curious. And I'm trying to get a membership together where we can do this every month if people are really interested in learning more, especially for their spiritual journey, if they're dealing with different themes or dealing with different stuff or trying to figure out their life purposes and things like that. But you can, if you're interested in a reading or any other type of work, past life regressions and things like that, you can book online with me or just email me. I do have Facebook and Instagram, same thing, Be the Light Wellness. Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. I'll put the link to your website in the show notes just to make it easy for people in case they are not somewhere where they can stop. Because I know I listen to podcasts in the car all the time. So, you know, it's not safe. Do not try to type in a URL while you're driving. Please don't do that. I don't want to be the reason for anybody's near-death experience. Um,
Right.
but yeah, so thank you so much, Elizabeth, for coming back on the show. This has been
You.
enlightening and educational on so many levels for me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it as always.
Thanks again to Elizabeth for this educational conversation, and thank you for listening. If you are interested in sharing your own paranormal experiences, or if you have an idea for an episode topic, please reach out through the contact form at peeppodcast.com. That's PEEP podcast.com. Remember, that stands for People Experiencing Everyday Paranormal. While you're there, subscribe to my newsletter to keep up with the podcast and all my creative and energetic endeavors. I usually only email it once a month, although you might get 2 editions in July with the Kickstarter. You'll receive briefs on recent episodes, information on any upcoming appearances, plus some occasional fun extras. If you enjoy the podcast, please give it some rating love on your favorite podcast app, share it with friends, and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Ratings, reviews, and shares help platforms like Apple Podcast and Spotify know it's worthy of surfacing to new listeners. And as we build our audience, we have more chances to hear their paranormal stories. A huge thank you to everyone who has given the show some love. You're helping it grow. No matter how you support the show, listening, telling others about it, or any other way, I absolutely appreciate your being here. Thanks again for listening. Stay safe and be well.